Welcome to another Good eReader review video. My name is Michael.
This is Peter.
Today we're going to give you a full hands-on review of the new Sony PRS T2. This is the white edition, although it does come in a slew of other colors such as a black and red. The first thing you notice when you look at this device is that it's not as glossy as the PRS T1, which a lot of people said that they didn't like. You can see it's very matty. It's not really reflecting light, on a screen because we have studio lights set up, but this isn't actually glossy. I really like the design aesthetic of this. As you can see, these actual keys are actually raised. They're not sunk or built right into it. So I like this. It has a really cool tectonic feel to it. Let me give you a little bit of specs before we give you the 360 view on this. It's 6-inch e-ink pearl. It has infrared on it, so along the bezel and stuff here, it allows you to basically interact with this to pinpoint accuracy. You'll see the same type of infrared technology in the Kobo Touch, Amazon Kindle Touch, and the Barnes & Noble Simple Touch. So if you've ever used any of these e-readers, you can expect the same experience out of this. It also comes with a stylus, so you can actually use it to draw, take notes, annotations, and so on, but there's no actual room in the e-reader to actually store the stylus. The Sony 650 and other previous models actually had smaller stylus that came with the unit and actual a place within the unit itself to store it. So just make sure you don't lose it because they often cost anywhere between $15 and $25 for replacements. 800 by 600 is the resolution. It has 2 gigs of internal storage. Battery life will last you generally about a month and a half, and it only takes 2 hours to power it on to full. It has Wi-Fi internet access, and I'll show you some very cool features that actually take advantage of this later on in the video. And it'll support EPUB, PDF, and text. What's cool about it is this is fully compatible with Adobe Digital Editions and Calibre. So if you use third-party tools to load ebooks or to manage your device, you're pretty well good to go. The main differences between this and the T1 is that the battery life in the T2 is more powerful, so it'll last longer. The hard drive space is a little bit lower. They say in the T1 you can store 1,200 books, but in the T2 only 1,000 books. This is partly because of some new software features that came in this, which basically take up some of the internal memory. It's actually a little bit heavier as well, by about 3.5 ounces. So Peter here is going to give you the full 360 on this device, and then we're going to show you all the software, ebook experience, magazines, newspapers, and a whole lot more. So take it away.
Alright, well, looking at it just head on, you see that the buttons are kind of keyed out and they're almost cut to the shape of each individual button, unlike the T1 that had just the same shaped buttons. I think this is a lot nicer, and you can actually feel the texture of each of them, so it's really nice. And as Michael said, they are raised. So infrared touch on the screen, and you have, it's a semi-glossy surface, but not nearly as piano-esque as the T1 was, so I think that's an upgrade. Looking on the right side of the device, you have a clean side, nothing going on. Nothing going on at the top either. Nothing really going on the side, but if you look on the thumbnail right here, you have a micro SD card slot, so this can support up to 32 gigs of storage. On the bottom, you have a super hard reset. You have micro USB in, power button, and a little cut out for a status indicator light. And on the back, you have kind of a hard rubbery backing. It offers a fair deal of grip, not compared to the Kobo Touch, which has that really nice quilted back that offers a little bit more grip than this, but this is alright. And as Michael said, it is heavier, and it doesn't actually store as much data without an SD card as the T1 did, which is a little weird to see an upgraded model have actually less storage and be heavier. So I don't know, can't really make sense of that, but Michael will describe several software upgrades that this has that the T1 didn't have later on in the video.
Okay, so this is your main home screen. As you can see, we've preloaded a number of things on here, from PDFs to EPUB books, just so we can give you a well-rounded review of the capabilities of the Sony PRS T2. You don't need to interact with this exclusively with the stylus. I find that using your fingers is totally fine. This is the main applications menu. You can see it's a little bit different from the original T1. For example, Sony has eliminated Google Books as a partner, because ever since Google Books went to being a part of Google Play, it really kind of changed a lot of the infrastructure of it. So there's no Google Books on here, but you can see that it has a public library icon here. What this is this taps into Overdrive. So if your local library does business with Overdrive, you can actually check out and read books directly within the Overdrive app. And Sony is actually the only company that actually has Overdrive borrowing, reading, and such within an e-reader itself. So it makes it really, really intuitive and very, very easy. Whereas if you have a Nook, a Kobo, a Kindle, you often have to jump through plenty of hoops in order to send books that you've checked out from the library directly to your device. You can see there's a web browser, which we'll show you a bit later. Your periodicals, where magazines and newspapers are stored. Notes, and handwriting, text memos are basically used for your stylus, for interacting, and notes, annotations, and so on. There's around 6 dictionaries actually with the PRS T2. So you could look at an English word and see what the meaning is in Spanish and so on. Some of the new features in here is Evernote, which will allow you to export a lot of sort of documents and notes and such to Evernote, and it actually has Facebook integration. So once you set this all up, you can send status updates as text and quotes and things like that. You could highlight something and then send it to like Facebook and such. A lot of e-readers are integrating a lot of social media aspects into their devices. So Sony is really kind of stepping up the Facebook and Evernote setup. If you hit settings here, you notice that there's a number of settings, and it doesn't lay everything in one menu, but there's actually like sub-menus here. So if we check out general settings, you can check out your page turn preferences, your keyboard, reader store notifications, and so on. Hit the back button, your wireless, application preferences, system management. So you can check out all this sort of stuff. Updates. You can actually check for updates right on a device, which is cool. So you see that there's a new update available here, and it tells you what it is. So this is cool because a lot of e-readers don't actually allow you to download and install updates right on a device. You have to sort of download it to your PC, copy it to a micro SD. It's, jumping through hoops. I really like how Sony makes the entire process of reading, updating, and doing books via Overdrive very seamless. It's all on the device. You don't need a PC or anything like that. Speaking of not needing a PC, you can actually shop for books via Wi-Fi with the Sony eReader store. Sony's really done a lot to really refine their store ecosystem since they really expanded into the United Kingdom a few months ago. They've really revised their entire experience. So you could, check out bestsellers. You can see it's pretty fast. You see the flickering, but that's because of traditional e-ink refreshes. But if we wanted to check out Nevermore by James Patterson, you can read reviews, add to cart, wish list, additional info, everything like that. You have your shopping cart. You can sign in. Obviously, we're not signed in because we're just kind of sort of exploring this, but the newsstand will give you all sorts of like newspapers and things like that. So you could subscribe to them. So you have your magazines and your journals, your newspapers. So we could look at, say, the Toronto Star, and you could take out like a single subscription for a single issue, or you could take out a monthly subscription. So fairly cool. There's plenty of content via the Sony store here to pretty well satiate all of your literary thirsts. Speaking of everything else, we're going to just check out the bookshelves really quickly, and then we're going to dive right into the content. So this is where all of your books are stored. You can also change like the views. So instead of like the pictures and things taking a little bit longer to load, you can go to your list view. You can also sort by. So a lot of kind of cool sorting options. And remember, you can use Calibre to further manage your e-reader once you start like loading in like more than 10 or 20 type of books. Let's check out Night Road by Kristen Hanna. And we'll show you the ebook experience. As you can see, pictures in e-ink very well. It displays fairly adequately. And you can churn the pages by swiping on a stylus. You can also churn the pages by hitting these page turn keys here, or just tapping kind of like a little flick on the side. So here is how it looks by default, but let's just say we want to augment our experience a little bit. We can hit the settings menu. You can see here that you can navigate the page, take notes, fonts, customize view, handwriting, and more. First thing we want to do is check out what type of font options we have here. So I'm a huge fan of fonts updating in real time. Gives you an indication on really how it looks. You can also change the complete font type if you want as well. Real time, you don't really have to hit any OK or prompt buttons. So fairly solid. You can see that the page turn speed, fairly quick. You can see that it's not giving you a full page refresh. And what we're basically doing is like scrolling down a page. If you click here, you can see your notes. So if you've taken notes in the book, you can do that. Let's try to do stuff with the stylus here. So much like the Sony PRS T1, you just long press a particular word. You can look up that word specifically like in a dictionary, or you can click send to, and once your Facebook and Evernote is set up, you can actually send that specific text. So you can see right there, Facebook, Evernote. And now what happens, let's click on a word again. Okay, now why don't we do a highlight and then we'll take a note. So highlight's perfect for like book clubs or the types of things where you're reading maybe e-textbooks for students. All right, now let's like take a note. All right, I think that note pretty well sums up that entire sentence fairly well. And there you go. There's our notes. Fairly cool. All right, so let's check out some of the more options that we have available here. Just to give you a sense of that, this is the type of control that you could expect out of EPUB books, whether they're purchased or whether you're downloading from the internet and loading them in. If you hit more, you can actually change your orientation. So you can go from landscape view to portrait view. It really sort of depends on how you like reading it. For me personally, I love reading in landscape mode. I find that it's a little bit easier. It doesn't have a built-in accelerometer or gyroscope, so you're basically going to have to, hit it on the software side of things. But this is very expected out of e-readers. Kindle, Kobo, and all these other e-readers mainly are software driven to change the orientation. And you saw here that we do have a few other options here. Post to Facebook, search, and then you do have your settings menu here. So if you don't want your note features, you can just take it off, and then you could hit info here. Gives you some of the book info here. Okay, so this is the EPUB experience, and we've pretty well summed that up ideally. Here is the comic book experience. Now, this is a PDF. One thing that Sony's done traditionally well is the way that they handle PDF reflows and everything like that. So let's this is pretty well the default view of it. All right, now you can see that when we looked at the frame here, it's much too small to read. As good as my sight is, I can't really read that. Let's check out what we can do in order to make this a little bit more manageable. So you can see some options here to make it brighter. Let's click on brighter and see what happens. It's made it a bit brighter, but not by much.
Just a touch.
Yeah. So here's how it looks brighter now. So let's go back to original.
Little sliders.
Yep. Some, this allows you a little bit more flexibility to brighten things up, tone them down, and so on.
Orientation.
Yeah, that brings it to landscape mode. So pretty well here we're just giving you a little bit of options. And you can see that it is taking a little while for it to render because it is a larger PDF file. It's cropped it, but it looks like crap. Alright. Let's see what increases the font looks like. Probably does nothing.
Doesn't look like it's too flexible with PDF comic books as of yet.
True enough.
Last option is page mode. A little bit wonky with the whole customized views.
Let's try some of the other grid things just to give the viewers there a little bit more of an indication on what each of these actually do to your, say, your traditional comic book.
So we just selected 2-column split, and it looks like that pretty much messed it up. Yeah, ends up not being too manageable there. Might want to switch this back to normal.
Why don't we try the fit to landscape width and see how that looks, because of course we are in landscape mode, so maybe this would make it a little bit more easier to see.
That's it.
So a little bit easier, but certainly not a lot of huge reflow, controls and things like that, like we've seen in the past. I think with PDFs, it's all a matter of hitting that sweet spot. All right, so let's look at the Dungeons Master's Guide. So this is an example of how a game manual type book would look. And you have seen this in plenty of our other videos. So this is a little bit different from the comic book. As you can see, by default it's like full page. So maybe we'll have a little bit more flexibility over the control and things like that here.
You know, there's not too much to change any of this up with. Doesn't look like there's a lot of contrast settings and you know, saturation and all that, but it doesn't seem to be too much to do with reflow or changing it up. You can just do like a little mini zoom in like we showed you there.
Yeah, true enough. But you can pinch and zoom.
This is one of the faster pinch and zooms we've seen on e-readers. A lot of them have refresh errors, and you can see that when you do pinch and zoom it does get a little pixelated. That is because it's pretty much rendering live, but it does the trick.
Yeah, so this might be like your better option for PDFs to like pinch and zoom particular things as opposed to like diving into submenus and doing things like that.
I mean, we all know that you can pinch and zoom PDFs because they're a lot more flexible. They are mainly just pictures, but in terms of us trying to find a reflow setting, like a lot of the pocketbooks did, there doesn't seem to be too many options for that.
Yeah, even with a lot of the other Sony e-readers, they had like a lot of reflow options. I think like the 2-column, 3-column view, I think that would probably be most applicable for like newspapers and things like that by default maybe have multiple columns and you want to take multiple columns and make them into one. That could be like the most relevant thing. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, I would probably say pinching and zooming is probably the best thing to do for reading a PDF. It's I don't really like pinching and zooming because if I were to turn a page or whatever, it doesn't retain a lot of the views that I had, so I'm constantly having to like move the orientation, like read it sort of like this, right? Oh, types, attacks, recharge. Oh, now I have to scroll all the way over here, you know? It's not the best, but PDF reading generally on 6-inch e-readers is not the best experience. If you're really into academic PDFs, you probably want to take a look at like a 9.7-inch tablet, like the Pocketbook 912, the Kindle DX. There's a bigger Onyx e-reader as well, but there's slim pickings for the larger screen class just because traditionally they're like $400 or $500, which is it approaches iPad types of costs, and obviously if you're serious about PDFs, probably the iPad might be the better investment. So we've given you an indication on the EPUB experience, how comics and things like that look. The last thing we want to do is look at a world newspaper to round off our sort of coverage here. And it's the same thing as like the Dungeons Master's Guide. You're looking at a lot of pinching and zooming by default here. We're turning pages pretty rapidly right now.
Once again, you can do that 2-column split to get a little bit more of a zoomed look on things.
Yeah.
But it does seem that no matter what mode you're in, you can pinch and zoom, so leaving it in the original will give you the maximum kind of screen, as well as when you're in landscape mode, you can just, head on in as much zoom as you can possibly do.
You can sort of kind of drag this
like a
around.
Mini map there.
Yeah, but it's certainly not ideal. Okay, let's dive into some of the other aspects of the device here. We showed you shelves, the reader store, applications. Let's show you the dictionary functionality, and then we'll show you the web browser. So pretty solid. If you click the settings menu, you can actually change the dictionary. So these are the ones by default that come bundled on the device. Fair number of them. You can also change the font of, like the built-in dictionaries. So that looks kind of small, but through the settings you can increase the size, much like you could do it within ebooks themselves. So you can kind of find your own personal taste and stuff like that. Just all depends on like what you want, right? But there is flexibility of control. And actually increasing the font in built-in dictionaries is something that really doesn't exist in a lot of e-readers. So this is a huge selling point. Lastly, your handwriting and notes and things, that's where they appear. You can also put your own pictures on a device. So you can actually load in your own images to use on the standby screen, so you're not stuck with like the default screen. Ink pictures do look very nice. See, there's not a lot of pixelation. It does look better in person than it does on camera, but it does look good. The last thing I want to do is show you the internet experience via the web browser. How responsive does it feel?
It's pretty good. I mean, although it seems like it's always playing catch up with you, but I typed it and it didn't seem that it had any errors so far. So the keyboard seems pretty good.
All right, let's see how just your average web page loads up.
That was pretty quick.
Yeah.
Let's see the blog here.
The Sony PRS T2 is running Android, just so you guys know. So there's always all sorts of kind of cool tips, tricks, firmware hacks and things like that, changing the keyboards, changing a lot of the features and stuff. So you might want to read our own Good eReader forum or check out Mobile Read, which usually has a lot of tools and stuff like that too.
That was really quick, the way it just booted up there with all these images, and I mean, I thought that was pretty quick. Doesn't seem like I can. There we go. We have a really picture-heavy blog, so pinching and zooming does seem a little slow, but not to discredit it, that did load pretty quick.
Yeah. Plus, we have a lot of interactive features and things like that. I'm sure if you're reading RSS feeds and stuff like that, it should be fine. But you do have some settings here. Your orientation, going back to home. If you click more,
you can view the downloads you've downloaded off of the internet. You have your Evernote compatibility.
Yeah, so you could upload specific web pages, RSS feeds and such right to your Evernote.
Capture screenshot. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. I think it's just doing its thing,
I
but
think it is capturing the screen. Oh, look at that.
all right. Well, we'll have to go back there and check it out. Now this looks like a little bit better. It's sort of like most touchscreens. If you double tap, the text becomes a little bit easier to read. Pictures aren't really lined up properly, but you can see from corner to corner, the text actually looks pretty good now. So this is definitely readable, and you don't have to keep pinching and zooming or anything like that. You can just sort of read it like that. So if websites have mobile sites, you probably want to use the mobile version just for web pages to load faster. But you can see the internet experience isn't too shabby. I think the web browser maybe doesn't have like a ton of features, but it does an adequate job. So now that we've checked out pretty well head to toe and we've hit the 30-minute mark, what are your final thoughts on the Sony PRS T2?
I like how it looks. I'm not a big fan of it. I mean, I know it's very difficult to really gauge how heavy something is, but for it to be heavier than its predecessor doesn't really make too much sense. You can see here, we've actually captured the entire blog, the entire blog page here, not just the page that we were actually on. So we have the entire length of about 20 or 40 articles there. But getting back to it, it's a really nice device. I don't like how they got rid of the audio capabilities. They don't even have a headphone jack. They're still giving you this gigantic, ridiculously huge stylus that extends the width of the device. You can't put it anywhere. It doesn't even really seem like you'd want to take it with you because, I mean, you can easily just touch the screen. You don't really need this. Plus, it's bigger than the device. It doesn't have as much onboard memory as the T1 did, although they are both expandable. Truthfully, hardware-wise, there's not really any differences. It is mostly the software. I do like how they integrated Facebook into it because a lot of people just update their Facebook with text anyways, so you wouldn't have to worry about videos or anything like that. Everything displays well. The screen is really nice. It's not too much different than the T1, but I still like it. Sony has been one of my favorite e-readers.
Yeah, I mean, aesthetically it looks really good. I mean, I don't really have anything bad to say about like the user interface and like the way that the home screen looks. I think it's fine. You saw in some cases we hit a comic book thing and it took a while to like load up. Pinching and zooming is a kind of a cool feature, but you could see when we do that with the whole refresh thing, it becomes kind of unreadable. With your average PDF, especially with like game magazines and comics, there really isn't a lot of reflow options that we've seen in previous versions of Sony e-readers. So I would say that this is probably one of their weakest offerings in terms of like PDF compatibility and functionality. Beyond all that, overdrive lending is awesome. The Sony e-reader store looks really good and really intuitive on this device. Evernote and Facebook, I don't use Evernote myself, but some people do. I use Facebook all the time, but I could see myself updating a few quotes here and there. It becomes a little bit easier than scouring the internet for quotes from like your favorite author, right? So that's cool. I like the raised keys. I think the white is pretty slick, and I like it how it's non-glossy. So I think that this is, if you're looking for an updated e-reader, this is widely available via shopereaders.com if you live outside North America, so you can pick this up right away. And if I were to give it a rating, probably give it like a good 7.5 out of 10. I think Sony really hasn't done anything too innovative with this next generation e-reader. It pretty well seems to be more of the same, except for some added software boosts and functionality. So we'll let you make the final call. Please comment on this video if you have anything to say, and check out for further reviews and comparisons, such as the Sony PRS 1 versus the Sony PRS 2, and many more. So for GetEReader.com, my name is Michael.
This is Peter.
Everybody take care.